Testing.
Some arguments for the later dating interpret wording regarding about the passing away of the Old Covenant as a reference to the temple have actually been destroyed. And the wording about confirmed to us by those who heard Jesus as implying a second generation of Christians. Okay. Go on. Is this working? There we go. Give me one moment. Let me just put this in the pocket here. There we go. Nice and easy. All right. Still good? Yes? All right. So yeah, the wording about it being confirmed to those by heard Jesus implies a second generation of Christians are in view, perhaps, as the audience. It also talks about warnings to hold fast to the faith and not apostate. Those could be references to persecution brought on by the Emperor Domitian, who ruled from 81 to 96. Those are the arguments. I'm not here to necessarily take sides. My opinion is more towards the earlier. I think the arguments are more convincing. Other people think differently. It's okay. It doesn't bother me that much. So, if you think that's controversial, let's talk about the authorship. Who wrote Hebrews? Nobody really knows, I think, is the bottom line, right? It's even more debated than the time frame that it was written. Paul is the primary candidate for many scholars and even some early church fathers. However, there are equally as many scholars and even church fathers who disagree with that, or they propose different authors altogether. Some other authors, that is hard to say. Some other authors that have been suggested are Barnabas, Apollos, Luke, Clement of Rome himself, Priscilla, and even Mary, the mother of Jesus, with the help of other apostles. There are decent reasons provided for many of those authors and decent reasons against these authors as well. The church father Origen probably said it best when he wrote, "But who wrote the epistle? In truth, God knows." Essentially, nobody knows except God. So with all of that out of the way, we're moving to the important part of Hebrews, which is the text itself. We're going to be focusing exclusively on chapter 1, verses 1 through 4. So you will not have to stray very far into the text. So in chapter 1, beginning with verse 1 and verse 4. So I'm reading from the Net translation. It will have probably some somewhat unfamiliar wording, just so you guys are aware, but I promise there's a reason for it. Verse 1, after God spoke long ago in various portions and in various ways to our ancestors through the prophets, in these last days he has spoken to us in a Son, whom he appointed heir of all things, and through whom he created the world. The Son is the radiance of his glory and the representation of his essence, and he sustains all things by his powerful word. And so when he had accomplished cleansing for sins, he sat down at the right hand of the Majesty on high. Thus he became so far better than the angels, as he has inherited a name superior to theirs. Where do we even start? Right away, we have it's actually quite a lot to unpack just in those 4 verses. And this is what I meant about the density of the text. Right away, we have a comparison, and this technique will continue throughout the book, right? Remember, Jesus is better. Well, it implies better than what? The writer describes how God communicated both in the past and present. So what differences do we see? What differences do we see? What differences do we see about how God communicated, both in the past and the present?
Prophets in the past versus Jesus
Okay, so just as a reminder to all of you to remind me, if somebody has a comment or a question, please remind me to repeat it for our brothers and sisters who are going to watch this later who have already said, like, could you say the comments and the questions that people say? Okay, I will. So Justin brought up, he said that the prophets spoke in times of old, and Jesus is speaking in the present, or perhaps in the latter days, I think is actually how you said it, okay? That's sort of repeating what we're seeing here. What are the actual differences, though? What are the qualitative differences about that? Yeah.
Man, and then Jesus was more than just God with us. Like, it
Okay.
wasn't secondhand. It was.
Okay. So Jackie's saying that before we had essentially men, regular men of sorts, and now the word or the message, however you want to, the communication is being brought by more than a man, by Jesus, by God with us. Okay? Any other thoughts? What are just like some very common ways in the Bible that God spoke in the Old Testament? How did he communicate with people? Through prophets. How else? Through angels. Okay, who else? Or what else? Visions, dreams. Now we're getting somewhere. He spoke out loud himself. Through the scriptures. Okay. Probably should have. I wish I had presentation views so I could know what I have up ahead. Here's what's happening here. What the writer is doing is he is trying to get us to focus on one thing. He's bringing us from all these things down to one. Okay? How does he do that? He's drawing our attention through these two words. You have one that is polymeros. You don't have to memorize these words. I'm not going to test you later. And that means something that is fragmentary. It's normally translated as many or many times or perhaps various portions. We get to the other word, polytropos. And that's an adjective that means in many ways of kind or class or manner. It's usually translated as many ways. So we have these many different things that are occurring. They're fragmentary. And it's done in all these different ways. So now the writer is walking us through this. How can we focus on that? Okay? You might be asking yourself, why are you boring me with this? Why should I care about this Greek study? It's because I'm assuming it's he, I apologize. We have the writer who is saying, God communicated in a variety of ways over a long period of time. All this stuff over here. All these polymeros and polytropos. And now it's going to move from dreams, visions, signs, prophets, physical structures like the tabernacle, the altars of incense, the laver, the temple, all the laws, all the rituals that he handed down. And it's going to narrow onto his son. Why is that significant? He has supremacy. That's going to be the argument, of course. Yes. What else? No one. He fulfilled all the prophecies. Okay.
What we have in Christ is not fragmentary, it's an entire whole. So there's this juxtaposition of we get portions and in a bunch of different ways, whereas in verse 2 we have through Christ the entirety through one source.
Exactly. We have a consistency, a uniformity, what I like to call something a singular revelation. It's taken all of these many different ways and it's bringing us right to this one point, right? There's a reason why it reads, in these last days, he spoke to us in various portions in various ways to our ancestors through the prophets. In these last days, he has spoken to us in a son. Singular, right? In many translations, in his son. Right? It's singular. The Son is also eternally present. Unlike prophets that were born and died and kind of went on or temporary, the Son is eternally present. and it's been revealed to us now. We're moving from this big kind of fragmentary way down to this one single point. And what's the relationship with a son and a father? Is it the same as the father might have with angels? Is it the same as one that the father might have with prophets? What's different about it?
He's an heir.
He's an heir. What else?
A father and a son have hopefully a closer bond, and most sons look up to their fathers to potentially become them or like them.
So Christina said that sons and fathers have a closer relationship, and there's a kinship where the son will emulate the father. Is that fair to say? Right. There's a strong, intimate connection between fathers and sons, just in a natural sense, and that is only a shadow, to use some language from Hebrews, of what God himself is. Yes?
In a sense, a child like a son has a responsibility to carry the legacy on.
Okay, so a responsibility of the son to carry on the legacy of the father. I like that thought as well. So we have God's singular revelation brought to us not over long spans of time. Did I see another hand? I apologize. Yeah, James.
John is very intimate with it. It says at the beginning, the word was with God, the word was God.
Okay,
No one else but angels and prophets would have that.
so I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. So drawing on the first chapter of John, we see that the Word, being Jesus, was present with God in a full sense. Again, something when you compare it to angels, to prophets, to all these other various ways and portions, they don't compare. The Son is ultimately supreme in that sense. Jesus is better, right? So God's singular revelation is now revealed to us, and it's not over these long spans of time or these various ways, but instantly, in a unified manner, and it's given to us not through numerous spokesmen like the prophets or even a messenger like the angels, but instead it's through the one who intimately knows the Father and shares his nature, his Son. The weight of just this introductory statement should spur us to want to know more about the Son and exactly what he is speaking to us. So, continuing on, how do we see the Son described? Go ahead, shout it out. How do we see the Son described here? The exact representation of the Father. That's one. There's 7, just so you know. I'm sorry? The brightness of his glory. Okay. Powerful. Is there a specific description from here about powerful? One more time. Creator of the world. Okay. Nolan?
He is the only mediator that we have between us and God.
Okay. So the only mediator between us and God, is that what is described right here? That's what I want to focus on with just this text. Is that what's being described? You're not wrong. I'm just saying, is that what's described right here? There's 7 things. Better than the angels? Yes. I may not have considered that one of them, but yes, it does say he became so far better than the angels. Okay.
He's the representation of his essence.
The representation of his essence, that's kind of the same thing that Jillian described. Sustains all things. We're getting close. We're like at 5-ish, 5, 6. Purifies, makes purification for sin, yes.
He sits down at the right hand of God in authority. I think that's what Nolan was sort of referring to.
Okay, if that's what you were saying, then absolutely. Yeah, sits down at the right hand of the majesty on high. There's 7 attributes. He is appointed heir of all things. He is through whom God created the world, radiance of God's glory, the representation of God's essence. I'm going to come back to that one. And he sustains all things by his powerful word. He also accomplished cleansing for sin, and he sits at the right hand of the majesty on high. What I found interesting about the representation of God's essence, that's how my translation has it, is it uses these two Greek terms. In case you didn't know, I like Greek. I don't know it at all, but I can copy what other things say about it. Representation, that word is, as you can see, maybe not, character. Probably don't pronounce it quite that way, but that's what it is. That's character. And what that word meant was, if you were to take some sort of embossing tool, you could make a character on a piece of leather, on a piece of clay. You're embossing something. You're giving the exact image of that tool. Okay? Essence. Essence is sometimes translated as substance. I think I like substance a little bit better, but for modern ears, essence maybe rings a little bit more true. Essence is a word that if you start really delving into the subject, you will get the word hypostasis. For any of my advanced theology people, hypostatic union, does that, I got one head nod, yeah. Hypostasis, okay? He is the exact image of the substance of God, okay? Those are the two parts that make up that phrase. Why am I sitting on this? You'll see why in a minute. What do you notice about these qualities?
I didn't hear the last word.
What do you notice about these qualities?
Well, I kind of doubt it's what you've got down. But there's a clear distinction here between what went on in the early part of creation. And then as time went on, it doesn't diminish what was happening during that time, but it was all pointing toward Christ. Therefore, that right there points to its superiority superiority of Jesus. So I think however we want to explain it, it probably carries with it, the idea that God revealed himself to people. It wasn't small stuff when he was doing it, but it was pointing toward someone who was much better.
Okay, that's going to be tough for me to summarize, so give me a second. 100% agree with you. God revealed things to people that were not insignificant, but every single one of them was in fact pointing to Christ. And that's indicative of some of these qualities that shows his supremacy. Is that fair to summarize? Okay. That's tough. All right. What else do we notice about these qualities?
No angel can claim to have any of these qualities to the degree that Christ has.
Yeah. Real simple, and the writer's going to make that argument later on. No angel can claim to have these qualities. That kind of leads me to where I'm wanting to go with this. What is this really pointing to, just in this very succinct way of describing the Son? Yes?
He's like the image of the unseen God.
I'm sorry, I keep cutting you
No,
off.
it's okay. That's what I was going to say. Like, he's we cannot see God, but he is the exact image of an unseen God.
I like the way you said that after I cut you off, actually. God is unseen to us, yet we can see his image in Jesus. Yeah. He is, again, the writer goes through great pains to try and stress how much better Jesus is than any of these other things that eventually they're going to talk about, or any of the things of the past, if you want to just say, full sail. Like, all these things in the past, they don't compare to what it is that's been revealed today, and that is the Son, Jesus. I want to look at one passage right here. Let's turn to Colossians chapter 1. And kind of maybe keep your finger in Hebrews, because we're going to draw a comparison here. So Colossians 1, verses 15 through 20. He is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of all creation. For by him all things were created, in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities, all things were created through him and for him. And he is before all things, and in him all things hold together. And he is the head of the body, the church. He is the beginning, the firstborn from the dead, that in everything he might be preeminent. For in him all the fullness of God was pleased to dwell, and through him to reconcile to himself all things, whether on earth or in heaven, making peace by the blood of his cross. Sounds nothing like what we read before, right? No, it's like almost the exact same points. They're just a little bit out of order, perhaps, and obviously use different language. You see why some people think Paul maybe wrote this? Like, Paul clearly wrote Colossians, and here we have so many of the same ideas. You know, you can almost just draw a line straight across each verse where they're almost mirroring each other in these qualities that Jesus is attributed, right? He is the image of the invisible God. All things were created through him and for him. He is before all things, and he holds them together. All the fullness of God was pleased to dwell in him. On and on and on and on. Right? Pretty interesting to me. So I was debating if I wanted to get in this, but we got just a little bit of time, so I'll probably leave you with a cliffhanger. Where might some controversies be with respect to, let me put the passage up here. With respect to this passage, where might some controversies exist even within the, if you want to call it the Christian world, or people who profess to be Christians? Where might some controversies lie with the implications of these statements?
There's some groups of people that don't believe Jesus is God.
Okay. Like who?
The Jehovah's Witnesses.
The Jehovah's Witnesses. Who else? Muslims, they don't believe the Bible anyway, even though they're supposed to, but that's a whole other thing. It's called the Islamic dilemma. Look that up if you have some time. It's really interesting. I heard Mormons, right? Mormons believe that Jesus is a created being as well, in the same way that Jehovah's Witnesses do. How do you think that they might interpret this, or at the very least, how do you think they might question what's being presented here? Here's a couple questions. How should we understand that phrase, appointed heir of all things? Was he not the heir of all things before? How did he have to be appointed to be an heir? Right? Is the world being created through Jesus the same as Jesus creating the world? If Jesus became better than the angels and inherited a superior name, did he not have it before? Are these fair questions? I'll be honest, like the first few times I read through all of this, I'm like, how do I understand this? How do I make sense of this? It's real simple to just be like, that's what somebody else thinks, so I can't think like them. But the problem is when you dismiss arguments, you're not being honest with what's being presented before you. I have my answer to this. Unfortunately, I don't have enough time to explain all of it, but that's why there's always another class. I promise we will get into that. But I did want to leave you with some of these ideas so that you can try to understand them, so that you can try and derive some knowledge from other scholars, other texts within the Bible itself, because these are real questions that real people who need to understand the true Jesus and his true nature, they need to hear from people who know this. And if you can't answer them in a way that is going to be honest as well as accurate, it's not going to help them. James.
Also, I think a lot of people, they'll just parrot back what they hear, so they might have been explained to this by someone else who either intentionally or unintentionally was misleading them, and now they have that unfortunate, thought process. So it's also that design to help to bring truth in that respect.
Yeah, very much so. James brought up the fact that there are some people who are being taught by others and are being misled, either intentionally or unintentionally, and they will just tend to parrot whatever it is that they've heard. That doesn't make a very strong belief system for them, but can we fall prey to that same problem where all we've done is just parrot what somebody else has told us without actually thinking deeply about what it is, evaluating how true this is, does this hold up to scrutiny? So, that's why I wanted to leave you with this. We're going to talk about, just so you guys know, we're going to talk about the idea of sonship within the Bible and what that means in relation to some of these questions. We're going to talk about what Jesus being the Word means and how that functions. We're going to talk about the actual sentence structure of this and what that means, all as a way to try and understand how can we answer some of these questions. How can we be certain of something that we just take for granted? Oh, Jesus is God. It says it right here. How is it that we can come to that conclusion but other people can't or won't? And not being dishonest about it. There's always that. Somebody can just not want to. So, any questions or comments about anything we've discussed tonight? No? Okay. I hope I've given you plenty to think about, that's for sure. As you can tell, we only got through 4 verses. And really, it's only like 3. But I make no promises about how fast we'll go, but I'm not going to break it up in 4 verses at a time. What I'm going to try my absolute best to do is thought for thought. Every thought that the author brings, I'd like to examine that thought, see if we can pull some different ideas out of it, if we can learn maybe something new that we haven't heard before. But ultimately, what I'm most grateful for is the fact that I don't have to get done with the whole book in 12 classes or something like that. It gives me plenty of time to dwell with some of these ideas because I will reiterate, it is so dense, it is so chock full of treasure that it would be terrible to skip over that just because we need to get through it fast. So much to learn from here. So, any other thoughts, final thoughts, comments, anything? No? Okay. With that, then, we're all dismissed.